let me just welcome everybody here, whether you're on the live call or you're watching this as a replay. This is going to be made available in the virtualdisciple.com library as well. So whether you're accessing the replay or you're accessing the live, we're glad that you're here, and so excited to be talking about this tonight. And so tonight we're going through our first pillar in the virtual disciple that we cling to and that we're going to be talking to everyone about each and every month. And just so everybody understands what that means, we've got 4 pillars essentially in our community that we're going to roll through on a rotating basis. And so with this being the first one, I thought it would be beneficial just to kind of explain the fact that we have 4 of these pillars that we're going to work through each month. And this month we are working through the heart. So you've got heart, habits, healing, and leadership. So each month when we gather, we're talking about these 4 different pillars that we believe help build our lives and grow in our discipleship. And so hopefully it's going to be helpful to you as we move forward. But this first pillar this month for August is heart. So this entire month, I'm going to be highlighting things within our community, the virtual disciple, on heart, on identity, on ensuring that we are aligned to vision and having clarity in those spaces. And so that's our pillar for this month. And as a part of that, we're talking today about being tired of trying, because again, it is so difficult for us to navigate how to really view ourselves as God sees us. And we've got to get to a place, if we're going to really grow as a disciple and as a person who is following Jesus, we've really got to understand our identity before we do anything else. Everything that happens flows out of our identity. And so we're going to begin talking about how do we move from striving to surrender. And so as we're talking about that, I really want you to just kind of take it in and not just kind of glaze past what's being said. If you're a note taker, taking notes is always good. They say that when you write something down, you retain 20 to 40% more than just thinking about it or saying it or even typing it. It's just not as good. So if you're a note taker, great. If you're not, be a note taker because it'll hang with you longer. So we're talking about being tired of trying, but let me ask you something real. Have you ever been tired, just exhausted spiritually, not from work, but from trying to be enough for God? Trying to be enough for God. I don't know about you, but I get to a place where I find myself working and trying to perform, and I equate the working and the performance with how God sees me. So when we start to think about our life with God, we've got to start viewing things differently, because the fact of the matter is many of us feel like this. We're showing up, praying, trying to grow, we're going to church, but deep down, you're still asking these questions. Man, is this working? Is this really what it's supposed to be like, what it needs to be, right? Does God see me? Am I doing enough? Like that word enough is just so piercing when we ask these kind of questions around how we walk with God and how we live. And so I want you to know that your walk with God and the clarity around your life and all of that, it's not a laziness issue. Okay, this is not a laziness problem. This problem, when we feel exhausted, when we feel like we're having a hard time continuing to go, and we're not really understanding why things are the way they are, this is not a laziness problem. It's a heart problem that's rooted in false identity. Okay, it's a heart problem that's rooted in false identity. And so as we're thinking about being tired and exhausted in the pursuit of God, I want you to really hone in on this idea behind what I believe. What do I actually believe about God? What do I actually believe about myself? And so The fact of the matter is that the world trains us to earn. The world trains us to earn. This world that we live in, it trains us to earn everything that we get. When I was coming up, my parents, I was probably the last generation that people were saying you need to go to college and you need to get a good degree, you need to get a 4-year degree, and a 4-year degree is going to give you a great job, right? And so maybe that was the same for you. I don't know. For me, that was how it was. And now the come up is kind of like, okay, start your own business, do your own thing, right? And so it seems like every generation has their thing. But what I would say is that no matter whether you're getting the 4-year degree talk or you're getting the talk about starting your own business or whatever that looks like, the world that we live in trains us to earn. And it tells us that from the moment that we're born, here's what we learn. We learn to perform, and that performance gives us a reward. And then the reward, sometimes we don't get reward, we get failure, and in that failure, we get rejected. Right? So it goes through this process and this filtering of, okay, I need to perform. And when I perform, there's this outcome of reward for good, failure for bad, and then rejection in that failure. And for most people, the failure and the rejection is what hangs around for so long, right? And so from the moment we're born, we're trained this way, right? Our schools tell us this. Our jobs tell us this. All of our relationships that we have tell us this, because this is how the world works. The system of the world works. And even, let's be honest, even some churches operate this way. That's the sad part about this, is that everything in our world does this. So here's what happens is this system ingrains itself in us, and we start projecting that system and that idea and that belief onto God. We think that God's love is transactional. We think it's transactional. But I want to help you. Here's what God actually says. What the Bible actually says is that in Romans 5:8, it says that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Now, if we're putting this into the system of the world, that just simply doesn't work. And so when we start projecting this onto God, there's an incongruence with how this operates and how this works out in our lives with our faith in God, right? So not only does Romans 5:8 say, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us, but in Isaiah 55:8-9, God actually begins to reveal himself in a different kind of way. Here's what he says through the prophet Isaiah. He says, my ways are not your ways. And he says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. And so God doesn't think the way that we do. His perspective is not the same as what our perspective is. And so we've got to then begin to look at, if his perspective is not mine, how do I change what I believe? Now remember, the backdrop of this issue is not how hard am I working, am I doing enough? It's this false identity that's rooted in wrong beliefs, okay? So here's a discipleship moment for us. Here's a growth moment. False beliefs will birth striving every time. And then striving produces exhaustion, not fruit. We're commanded in the scripture not to produce anything. The only thing that we're commanded to produce is this: fruit. You cannot produce fruit when you're operating in striving and exhaustion, okay? And so this moment of realization that I have a wrong belief about who I am in God, it really helps us to start shaping how we move forward from that, right? So let's talk for just a minute about how disappointment shapes our beliefs, because what happens in the striving is we become disappointed with God, we become disappointed with self, we become disappointed with the situation, and then the fruit that's actually produced, because you're going to produce fruit whether you're trying to or not. It's going to happen, right? And so that disappointment actually is producing a different kind of fruit. But let's talk about how disappointment actually shapes our beliefs, because the fact is that belief isn't just what you say. Okay, belief is not just what I say. It goes further than that. Belief is what my body, my mind, and my behavior default to under pressure. Belief is what, so if you're wondering, what do I actually believe about myself and about God? What kind of words are you saying when you're under pressure or when you're not seeing what you thought you ought to see? Right? What kind of actions are you taking when you're feeling stressed out and anxious and worried and all of those kinds of things? Our bodies, our minds, and our behaviors, they default to what we actually believe when pressure comes into our lives. So when things don't go my way or things don't go the way that I prayed about, this is when the devil gets in the details. He starts inserting himself in those small places. And he starts whispering things like, well, maybe you didn't do enough. Maybe you didn't have enough faith. Maybe you didn't pray hard enough. And so people begin to silently believe things like, well, if I was more faithful, maybe God would have come through. Or they might believe things like, if I didn't mess up, maybe I'd be further along than I am by now, right? Like I've had that thought so many times. Like if I would have just made a different decision, if I'd have just acted differently, if I'd have made a better choice, I'd be so much further along by now. You know, I think to myself sometimes, here I am, X amount of years old. I'm not going to reveal that on here, but X amount of years old. And I'm thinking, man, I wish I would have been a lot further than I am. And we get into this place where we think that, you know, this is a product, even though we feel faithful, this is a product of we just didn't do enough, right? So here's how belief actually is shaped by disappointment and the things that happen. When people strive, they're not just working hard, okay? So when we're striving, it's not that we're just working hard. Striving is actually me trying to compensate. I'm trying to compensate for what I secretly believe is missing or untrue about me. So striving is this deeper mode of operation than just working real hard. Like hard work is a good thing, right? So it's something that's fulfilling. It brings contentment. It gives us all these great and wonderful things that we would also call fruit in our lives, that I can look at an achievement and say, man, I'm really proud of the fact that I was able to do that. That was a really amazing thing to be able to accomplish. And I'm grateful that God's given me the strength and the ability to be able to walk that out, right? But there's a difference between working hard and striving. There's a difference between working hard and striving, because striving, and I'm going to say it again, we're trying to compensate for what we actually and secretly believe is missing or is untrue about us. Okay? So here a couple of scriptures. I don't have this on the screen, but a couple of scriptures that come to mind for this. Proverbs 23:7 says, a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And then Romans chapter 12:2 instructs us to start thinking differently. It says, be transformed by the renewing of our minds, right? So that the good and pleasing will of the Father can be revealed in us. We've got to have a transformation in our mind if the good and pleasing will of the Father is going to be revealed in us, okay? So here's the deal. If I believe really deep down that God's disappointed in me, I strive to prove that I'm enough to Him. I strive to prove that I'm enough to Him. If I really believe deep down that blessing is earned, I start working for what was already mine. If I believe deep down that I'm behind, that I'm not in the timeline that I should be on, then I try to start hustling to catch up to some fake finish line that's out there, right? There's this fake finish line that we create for ourselves, and God is so much less concerned about the finish line than He is about the process that ends up producing fruit. If we could learn just to love the process, that would eliminate some of the lies that we believe about this.